Well, we've all heard the saying that when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. So today we're going to do that in Photoshop. I was recently at Yosemite National Park, and it's a beautiful place. Love to go there. We were at a place called Tunnel View, which is just an exceptional place to go for sunrises, sunsets. These are some images from sunrises. And this is from a sunset that we did a year ago. But on this particular day, we got there, we're excited, we're hoping for some snow and maybe some frost. And this, lo and behold, is what we found when we got there. It was very blah, very foggy, and not really the dream day to be out photographing. So today we're going to take this and turn it into something like this or like that. And we're going to do that because we photographed this in RAW. There's a whole bunch more data there than what you're actually seeing. And so we're going to go and we're going to show you how to do that. We're going to go from this and make it a little more exciting. So that's what we're doing today in Photoshop. Quickly, thank you to Jade, who's pushed me along in this journey of blogging, vlogging, whatever you want to call it. And to Joe, and to Karen, and to Tyrene, and Sherry, and Maureen, and Pirette, who have come along on this journey to California with me to see and capture these great locations. So thank you all, and oh my goodness, and Georgette, and Sharon. You guys were on this trip as well. So thank you very much for coming out. Without any ado, we're going to go to Photoshop. So actually, it's not really Photoshop. It's just Adobe Camera Raw. But this is where we're going to go to do the rest of this stuff. So we're simply going to open this bad boy up. And as you can see, the colors are very blah. It's not a great scenic, not something you probably want to hang on your walls. But we're going to start off by simply going into lens corrections. We're going to enable profile correction, and that way we're just telling Adobe that we're using a Nikon shot with a 24-to-120 f4 lens, and we're just saying, hey, you can make the lens corrections and just make it a little better. Next thing we're going to do, Adobe's added this wonderful filter called dehaze. If you haze it, it just adds more haze. And if you dehaze it, you're just taking that haze and removing it from the image. So we're going to start with a little dehaze. We're going to dehaze it down to about 75-ish. So taking a lot of the haze out of the image. Now we've got a very underexposed image that looks kind of not great in here. So we are going to start off by simply grabbing our exposure and bringing up our exposure to plus 75, plus 80, somewhere in that range. Our color and tint, this is just simply your white balance. And we're simply going to bring this up and we're going to set it actually to daylight. And just let it start there. We'll go on from there in just a moment. Next thing we're going to do is, before we even get into the sky, well, we're going to start off with this. So we're going to go into our contrast. If we add contrast, it makes it look more contrasty. If we reduce contrast, it brings out some of the detail in the shadows. So we're going to take this, we're going to bring our contrast down to about minus 25 or so. Then we're going to go and grab our highlights. We're going to bring those down, and we're going to bring our highlights down to about minus 75 or so. Just to let some of the detail come out. We're going to bring our whites down a bit as well. And our shadows, we're going to open up our shadows a little bit. Not a ton, but somewhere in the 35 range, just to kind of bring it open. Now all of a sudden we're seeing detail in the foreground, and we're still seeing detail in the clouds, which is awesome. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the clarity filter and just give it a little extra punch. So we're going to bring it up to 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that range. Not a lot, just a bit. Our vibrance and saturation, we're going to bring those up and just let the colors come forth. And we're going to get into the sky in just a minute, but first we're going to get into this foreground stuff. So Adobe's got this wonderful thing called the Targeted Adjustment tool. So we're going to go click on that. We're going to grab the hue, and with that you can change color tones one at a time. And with this one here, we've got some greens in the foreground, some just a little bit of yellows kind of popping out here. But we can make those by clicking and dragging. We can make those really green, or we can start to bring a bit of a fall effect. And I'm going to bring a fall effect here because I kind of like the fact that we can bring these colors and just play with them and make it feel like the time of year we want it to look like. So that's something we can do with just the Targeted Adjustment tool. After that, we're going to go and we're going to grab a graduated filter. Gonna bring this down here, and we're simply going to darken the sky down a little bit. With this, we're also going to play with the tint and the temperature. So we're going to bring the temperature and bring a little bit of blues into the sky, like the blues. Then we're going to go and bring a little bit of the pinks back in as well, pinks and purples. So you can go way out. That's obviously not looking real. We're just going to bring it up to somewhere in the 13, 14 range. Bring that down just a touch. It's a little bit on the rich side. And then saturation we can play with to get sort of the numbers we want. That's kind of nice right in there. So that's step one. If you wanted to add color to the whole thing on a gradient as well, you could simply grab the color, and by simply clicking anywhere in here, you can change the color of the gradient that you just made, which you don't want to do a ton of, but maybe bringing a little pinks in there would be nice, eh? Just a hint, not too much, just a little bit. And that's our gradient tool. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our brush, and we're simply going to play with the midtones a bit. We're going to play with the bottom tones, the foreground a bit, and then we're going to play a bit with the background. And so with our brush, we're going to take that pink and we're going to turn it back to a white, and we're going to zero this out as well. Actually, we're probably going to add a little bit of temperature in here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to just come into the midground, and we're going to bring the exposure down a little bit there. Just right in about there. Temperature and tint, we're going to bring, yeah, that looks good there. And our tint, oh, perfect. That looks lovely. I am happy with that. Saturation we're going to bring up a bit as well, just to add a little bit of that mountain saturation in. Next thing, we're going to add another adjustment brush, and this one here, we're going to come in here. It's a little bit bright right in the front here, so we're just going to take and darken it down just a little bit, not too much, and by adjusting our temperature and tint, we can again control those balance that we want to kind of get coming into the foreground. That's really quite lovely. So we're just darkening it down a little bit. We're also going to add a little bit of clarity just to punch it up a bit. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to do one quick little brush in the sky, and then we will be done. This bad boy came quickly. So we're going to come in here and just add a little bit of drama to the sky. Ooh, minus 40. That's a bit severe, but as you can see, you can just play with that. After you've done your brush adjustment, you can play with it. You can add color tones if you want. And we're just going to bring it in here, and we're going to add a little bit of this coming through this tone as well. Oh, I don't want to do that. Not quite so much in there. Not loving that. So we're going to just grab a new brush, and we're going to come in here We're going to add whites to that just a bit. We're going to add a little bit of the highlights back. And as far as color goes, we don't want to add blue. Oh, nice. I like that. And with this, we could dehaze it, but we don't want to do that. We're going to add a little bit of haze in that. So we're just going to bring the fog back into the foreground as it's sort of dissipating in the background. We're also going to do that into this area here. So we're just going to add little bits of fog. So we're just going to take and reset our corrections. For this new one, we're going to just brush into the fog in the foreground. And we're simply going to take and add a little bit of haze to that. So instead of taking the fog away, we're going to add a little bit of extra fog. Just because it adds a little bit of fun to our image. We're going to bring the whites up in that, and we're going to bring the highlights up just to add depth throughout the whole image. So in a couple of quick minutes in Photoshop here, we have gone from this, which is what you'd get if you photographed in JPEG mode, to this, which you could do with a couple of raw adjustments. So hope you've enjoyed this this time we had together. Hope you learned something from it and got something out of it. Thanks for joining us. Next week, we are going to start working on some images, some portrait shoots in Jamaica, man. So grab your sunscreen, your bathing suit, and maybe your flip-flops. Grab a cold Pepsi and join us in Jamaica as we start to do some retouching and shooting of portrait work. Thank you very much for joining us. Please, if you got something out of this, hit the like button, share it, subscribe. All this stuff just kind of helps me feed my kids. My kids are getting big and they're hungry. So thanks for doing that. Have a great day, and thanks again for joining us.